May 31st, 1223. Somewhere on the endless grasslands of what we now call Ukraine, 80,000 men are about to learn the most expensive lesson in military history. The air is thick with dust. The metallic scent of fear hangs heavy. Bodies will soon scatter across the steppe like broken dolls. The screams of the dying will mix with the thunder of hooves. By sunset, 9 out of 10 of these warriors will be dead. Their princes will be crushed beneath a victory platform while Mongol generals feast above them. And the handful who survive will carry home a warning that Europe will ignore for 14 years, until it is almost too late. But here is what you need to understand right now. What you are about to witness is not a battle. It is the final examination of a 3-year reconnaissance mission, 5,500 miles across some of the most brutal terrain on Earth. A campaign that covered more ground than the entire width of the United States. Conducted by 20,000 horsemen who were never meant to conquer anything. They were sent to learn, to map, to test, to understand. And when they were done learning, they destroyed an army 4 times their size in less than a day. Not because they were stronger, but because they knew exactly what they were doing. This is the story of how patience became a weapon, how intelligence defeated strength, how 2 men turned reconnaissance into an art form so perfect that military academies still study it 800 years later. The names you need to remember are Subutai and Jebi. And by the end of this story, you will understand why those names should terrify anyone who has ever underestimated a prepared opponent. Let me take you back 3 years, to the year 1220. The Khwarezmian Empire no longer exists. If you have never heard of it, that is because Genghis Khan erased it from the map with the kind of systematic destruction that made his name synonymous with apocalypse. The Shah had made a fatal mistake. He executed Mongol ambassadors, killed them for delivering a peaceful trade proposal. In the Mongol worldview, this was not just an insult. It was the worst crime imaginable. Ambassadors were sacred. They carried the words of khans and kings. They walked between worlds. To kill one was to declare that you recognized no law, no honor, no rules of civilized interaction. And so Genghis responded with total war. City after city burned. The Shah died in exile on an island in the Caspian Sea, broken and alone. His son fled deeper into Persia. The empire that had once controlled Central Asia became a cautionary tale. But while the great Khan consolidated his conquests, 2 of his most brilliant generals requested permission for what they called a reconnaissance mission. Their names were Subutai and Jebi. Genghis called them 2 of his 4 dogs of war, warriors who would crush through cliffs and grind boulders to grit. And when these 2 asked to continue westward from Persia through the Caucasus into the European steppes, Genghis gave his blessing. What followed changed the course of European history. But before we get to that, you need to understand who these men were. Because their backgrounds tell you everything about how the Mongols operated, about why they conquered half the known world. Subutai, say that name slowly. Subutai. The son of a blacksmith, born on the edge of nowhere in northern Mongolia. No royal blood, no inherited rank. Nothing that would mark him for greatness except for one thing. He was brilliant. At 14 years old, he joined Genghis Khan's forces, not as an officer, as a common soldier. He carried supplies, tended horses, learned by watching, but he watched with the eyes of someone who understood systems, who saw patterns, who could hold an entire battlefield in his mind and predict how every piece would move. By his early 20s, he was commanding the vanguard of Mongol armies. Think about that progression, 14 to 25. From supply boy to commanding the most elite units in the most successful military force on the planet. That is not luck. That is meritocracy taken to an almost insane extreme. Genghis Khan did not care where you came from. He cared what you could do. And Subutai could do things that frankly terrify me when I study them. He understood logistics in a way that would not be matched until the 20th century. He knew that wars were won with supply lines and communication networks, with the ability to move faster than your enemy expected, with intelligence gathered months before the first arrow was fired. He was 35 years old in 1220, already a legend, already responsible for victories that should have been impossible, and he was about to conduct the longest cavalry raid in human history. But he was not going alone. JB. Again, say it slowly. JB. It means arrow. But that was not his birth name. His story is worth pausing for because it tells you everything you need to know about how the Mongols built an empire. This man had once been Genghis Khan's enemy. 1202, the wars of Mongol unification, dozens of tribes fighting for dominance across the steppes. Genghis was rising, but he was not yet the unstoppable force he would become. In one battle, an archer named Zurgadai shot Genghis Khan's favorite horse right out from under him. A perfect shot, 300 yards. Moving target, hit the horse clean in the chest and dropped it mid-charge. Genghis survived the fall, barely. But he never forgot that shot. Years later, after Genghis won the unification wars, he held a gathering of the defeated tribes. He asked a simple question: who had the audacity to make that shot? The tent went silent. Everyone knew this was a death sentence. Genghis was asking so he could identify the man and execute him publicly, make an example. Show what happened to those who tried to kill a Khan. And then Zurgadai stepped forward. He was 40 years old, a warrior past his prime. He had nothing to lose. He looked Genghis Khan in the eye and said essentially this: "That was me. You can kill me now, or you can spare me, and if you spare me, I will become your most loyal servant. I will become your arrow. I will fly wherever you point me, and I will strike true every time." The tent waited for the execution order. Genghis Khan smiled. He did not just spare the man, he renamed him JB, Arrow, and he made him a general. Within 3 years, JB had risen to command the critical left wing in the invasion of Jin China. He was trusted with independent operations, given authority to make decisions in the field, treated as one of the most valuable assets in the entire Mongol military structure, from attempted assassin to trusted general in less than 5 years. That is the Mongol way. That is how you build loyalty that lasts. That is how you attract the best talent from every corner of the world. You judge people by their competence, by their courage, by their honesty, not by where they were born or who their father was. So when Subutai and Jebe requested permission to continue westward in 1220, Genghis knew exactly what he was authorizing. He was sending his 2 best field commanders on an intelligence-gathering operation, a reconnaissance in force. They would probe, test, map, understand. And if they happened to destroy a few kingdoms along the way, that was simply confirmation that the intelligence they gathered was accurate. 20,000 horsemen, all cavalry, no infantry, no siege equipment, no supply wagons. Each man had multiple horses. They rotated mounts throughout the day, keeping their animals fresh. They could cover 60 to 100 miles per day if needed. They carried dried meat and yogurt that could last for weeks. They drank mare's milk when necessary. They were the most mobile military force the world had ever seen, and they were about to embark on a journey that would take them through Azerbaijan, through Georgia, through the Caucasus Mountains, and finally into the steppes north of the Black Sea. 5,500 miles in 3 years. Let me put that in perspective for you. That is roughly the distance from New York City to London and back again. On horseback, through hostile territory, fighting battles the entire way. Azerbaijan fell first. The local rulers did not understand what they were facing. They saw 20,000 cavalry and assumed it was a raiding party, something they could pay off or fight off. They were wrong. Subutai and Jebe used tactics that would become their signature: feigned retreats, pincer movements, coordinated attacks from multiple directions using signal flags and courier systems that operated faster than anything the locals had ever seen. Azerbaijan became a testing ground, a place to refine techniques, to learn what worked against different types of armies. Then came Georgia. This was a real kingdom, Christian, allied with the Byzantine Empire, with heavy cavalry and fortified cities and a military tradition that stretched back centuries. Subutai and Jebe defeated them twice. The first time was straightforward, a classic steppe tactic executed with precision. But the Georgians rebuilt, they learned, they adapted. So the second time, Subutai and Jebe had to get creative. They used the terrain differently. They attacked at dawn instead of dusk. They varied their patterns, and they won again, because this was not about pride. This was about testing, about pushing themselves and their enemy to see where the breaking points were. Every battle was a classroom. Every victory was data. The Caucasus Mountains should have stopped them. Narrow passes, fortified strongholds, local tribes who knew every trail and every ambush point. But Subutai was a logistics genius. He split his forces, moved them through multiple passes simultaneously, used psychological warfare and bribery and demonstration of force to convince local tribes that resistance was pointless. The Alans and Circassians tried to fight. They lost. And then Subutai and Jebe emerged onto the western steppes and encountered the Cumans. The Cumans were different. They were not city dwellers. They were nomads, Turkic people who controlled the grasslands north of the Black Sea. They understood steppe warfare. They had fast cavalry and generations of experience fighting on horseback. This should have been an even match. It was not. Khan Khotan commanded approximately 40,000 Cuman warriors. He was experienced, respected. He knew these lands like the back of his hand. And Subutai and Jebe destroyed his army in a matter of weeks. They used every tactic they had refined over the previous 3 years. Night attacks, false camps, misinformation spread through captured prisoners. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration of complete tactical superiority, and when the dust settled, Khan Khotan fled west with the remnants of his forces. He had lost his lands, lost his people, lost his dignity. He did the only thing he could think of. He ran to his son-in-law for help, Prince Mstislav Mstislavich of Galicia, known to history as Mstislav the Bold. He was exactly the kind of warrior his nickname suggests: brave, aggressive, charismatic. The kind of leader who rides at the front of every charge and expects his men to follow, which they did. Because that is what you do when your leader is willing to die before you do. But bravery is not the same as strategic thinking, and aggression is not the same as wisdom. When Khan Khotan arrived at his court in Galicia with the remnants of his defeated army, the message was stark. Today the Mongols have taken our land. Tomorrow they will take yours. Mstislav the Bold listened, and he made a decision that would doom 80,000 men. He called for a coalition. April of 1223, the city of Kiev, the center of what we now call Kievan Rus. But here is something you need to understand. Kievan Rus was not a unified nation, not in any modern sense. It was a loose confederation of principalities, each ruled by a prince who technically owed allegiance to the Grand Prince of Kiev. But in practice, each prince did pretty much whatever he wanted. These guys spent as much time fighting each other as they did fighting external enemies. Think of it like this. Imagine the United States as 50 separate countries that sometimes cooperated and sometimes went to war with each other, all while claiming to be one nation. That was Kievan Rus. Political nightmare does not even begin to describe it. But the Cuman warning sparked something. Fear, pride, a sense that maybe this time they needed to work together. When the princes assembled in Kiev, the coalition that formed was impressive on paper. Mstislav the Bold brought his forces from Galicia. Prince Mstislav III Romanovich, the Grand Prince of Kiev, committed his armies. The Prince of Chernigov joined, the Prince of Kursk, Daniel Romanovich of Volhynia, and Khan Khotan's surviving Cumans. All told, they assembled something like 80,000 men. Now let me be clear about this number. Only about a quarter to a third of these were professional soldiers. The rest were levies, farmers given spears and shields and told to march. But 80,000 is still 80,000. And when you look at that number on paper, facing 20,000 cavalry, the math seems simple. Except there was one fatal flaw that Subutai and Jebe would exploit so perfectly it would become a case study in military disaster. They never appointed a supreme commander. Let that sink in for a moment. 80,000 men, multiple princes, different contingents from different regions with different traditions and different loyalties, and no single person in charge. Each prince commanded his own forces, made his own decisions, coordinated only when he felt like it. This was not an army. This was a committee with weapons, and committees are where strategy dies. Gentlemen, I know you have seen coalition failures in your careers, whether in military service or in corporate boardrooms or in community organizations. You know what happens when talented people refuse to agree on who is in charge. You know what happens when ego and pride and territorial instinct override common sense. What you are about to witness is why unified command is not optional. It is not a nice to have. It is the difference between victory and annihilation. The Rus forces began gathering in April at the Great Bend of the Dnieper River. They came by boat, by horse, by foot, a massive host that must have looked invincible as it assembled. 80,000 warriors, heavy cavalry and armor, infantry with shields and spears, archers, engineers, supply wagons, the largest army assembled in the region in generations. Meanwhile, about 200 miles to the east, Subutai and Jebe received word of this mobilization, and they made a decision that seems counterintuitive, a decision that tells you everything about how they thought. They sent ambassadors. The Mongol envoys arrived in Kiev with a message of peace. We have no quarrel with the Rus. We are only pursuing the Cumans, who are our enemies. We are marching east, away from your cities. There is no need for war. It was a perfectly reasonable message, the kind of diplomatic overture that should have sparked negotiations, should have bought time, should have created space for a peaceful resolution. The council chamber erupted in debate. Mstislav the Bold slammed his fist on the table. These are spies, liars. They come to see our strength and report back. We should execute them now and send their heads back as our answer. Mstislav III of Kiev, the Grand Prince, hesitated. He was older, more cautious. He had seen enough wars to know that killing ambassadors was a line you did not cross. But tradition is not the same as courage in the eyes of younger princes. And around that table, boldness was valued over prudence. The other princes sided with Mstislav the Bold. Execute them. Send a message. Show these Eastern barbarians that we are not afraid. Outvoted, outmaneuvered by men half his age with twice his confidence and none of his experience. Mstislav III gave the order he did not want to give. The ambassadors were executed. It was a decision that would haunt him on a hill 3 months later. A decision made not from conviction, but from political pressure, from the need to appear strong rather than wise. Sometimes the worst decisions are the ones we make to satisfy other people's expectations. Let me pause here because this decision fascinates me. The Mongols had done this exact same diplomatic test 5 years earlier with the Khwarezmian Shah, and the Shah had also executed their ambassadors. The Shah's empire no longer existed. The Mongols were not sending these embassies because they desperately wanted peace. They were creating legal and moral justification for what they were about to do. In the Mongol worldview, killing ambassadors was one of the worst crimes imaginable. It meant you recognized no rules, no honor, no law, and therefore the subsequent violence was not conquest. It was justice. Mstislav III had just painted a target on every city in Rus. The Mongols sent a second embassy. This one did not offer peace. It simply declared war. And then Subutai and Jebe put their plan into motion. They positioned their main force of 20,000 horsemen to the east, waiting, and they left behind a rear guard of exactly 1,000 men under an officer named Gemyabek. Now think about this for a moment. You are facing an army of 80,000. You have 20,000 total, and you deliberately leave 1,000 men where the enemy can find them. That is not a defensive position. That is bait. That is the first piece of a trap so sophisticated, so perfectly executed, that it makes me uncomfortable when I analyze it, because it required sacrificing 1,000 men, 1,000 warriors who knew they were not coming back, who rode out knowing their job was to die in a way that looked like desperation. That made the enemy feel powerful. That set the hook. Late April, the massive Rus army began its march east. They crossed the Dnieper using boats lashed together into makeshift bridges. Cavalry first, then infantry, moving in a column that stretched for over 15 miles across the steppe. The logistics of moving 80,000 men are staggering. Water, food, sanitation, communication, discipline. And remember, this was not one army. It was 10 different contingents, each led by a different prince, each with its own priorities. Already, the cracks were forming. But morale was high. The warriors were confident. They outnumbered the enemy 4-1. They had heavy cavalry. They had the blessing of their princes and their priests. They were going to chase down these Mongol raiders and teach them a lesson about invading civilized lands. When Mstislav the bold scouts spotted Gemyabek's rear guard across a small river, the prince made his move. He did not wait for the other contingents. He did not coordinate with the Grand Prince. He simply ordered his forces to cross. The Mongols fired arrows as the Rus cavalry splashed through the water. Men fell. Horses screamed. But the numbers were overwhelming. When the Rus forces made it to the opposite bank, their superior numbers told, the Mongol rear guard fought desperately. They were professionals. They knew their business. But they were outnumbered 10-1. Not a single one survived. The Rus princes were ecstatic. They had just annihilated a Mongol force without losing many men. The enemy had tried to hold a river crossing and failed. They were running scared. These Mongols are not so tough, they told each other. They are fleeing. We will catch them in a few days and finish this. And so they pursued. For 9 days, the Rus army would chase the Mongol main force deeper and deeper into the steppe. And every step of those 9 days was choreographed, every retreat calculated. Every moment of apparent panic was theater performed by professionals who never broke character once. The trap was being set, mile by mile, day by day. And the Rus, confident in their numbers and their righteousness, marched straight into it. The evening of May 30th, 1223. The sun is setting over the western steppe, painting the grassland in shades of amber and gold. In different circumstances, this would be beautiful, peaceful. But there is no peace tonight. 80,000 men are settling into camp along the banks of the Kalka River. Some are confident. Some are exhausted. All of them believe that tomorrow will bring victory. They are wrong. 200 miles to the west, their homes and families wait for news. 200 miles of hard-won ground. 9 days of relentless pursuit through heat and dust and growing doubt. But they caught them. The Mongols finally stopped running. Tomorrow the princes tell their men, "We end this." What they do not know is that every single step of those 9 days was choreographed. Every retreat was calculated. Every moment of apparent panic was theater performed by professionals who never broke character once. And tonight, as the Rus forces make camp in chaos and confusion, Subutai and Jebe are making their final preparations. The trap is set. All that remains is to spring it. Let me take you back through those 9 days, because the details matter, the patterns matter. Understanding what Subutai and Jebe were doing hour by hour is the difference between seeing this as a battle and understanding it as a masterpiece of military deception. Day 1 of the pursuit. April 22nd, 1223. The Rus army crosses the Dnieper in the morning. Boat bridges. Cavalry first, then infantry. It takes most of the day to get 80,000 men and their supplies across a major river. By late afternoon, Mstislav the Bold's vanguard spots Gemiabek's 1,000 men positioned across a smaller river about 10 miles east. Standard defensive position. Archers on the banks, cavalry in reserve. Mstislav does not hesitate. He orders the attack. His heavy cavalry crashes into the water under a hail of arrows. Men fall. Horses scream and thrash, but there are 3,000 of them against 1,000 defenders. The mathematics are brutal and simple. The fight lasts less than an hour. Not a single Mongol survives. Mstislav's men strip the bodies, take the armor, the weapons, the horses, evidence of victory, proof that these Mongols bleed and die like anyone else. That night, around the campfires, the talk is confident. Did you see how they fought? Brave enough, but outnumbered. Tomorrow we catch the main force. This will be over in a week. What they do not discuss is why 1,000 men were left alone, why there was no attempt to reinforce them, why the main Mongol army, visible on the horizon just that morning, seemed to evaporate the moment the fighting started. These are not the questions soldiers ask after an easy victory. Day 2. The Rus army wakes before dawn, eager. They break camp quickly and begin moving east. By mid-morning, scouts report Mongol cavalry visible on the horizon, maybe 5 miles ahead, moving away. Not fast, but steady. Mstislav the Bold wants to charge immediately. Take all the cavalry, leave the infantry behind, catch them before nightfall. Grand Prince Mstislav III disagrees. Keep the formation intact. Do not split the army. Move together. They argue for an hour, precious time wasted. Finally, they compromise. The mounted forces move ahead, but not too far. Stay within sight of the infantry. Maintain communication. It is a solution that satisfies no one and commits to nothing. The Mongols stay visible all day. Occasionally, small groups turn back, fire a few arrows at long range, then retreat again. Harassment, testing, probing for reactions. By nightfall, the Rus have covered maybe 20 miles. The infantry is already tired, feet are blistering. Water discipline is breaking down because no one expected a long chase. That night the princes gather to discuss tactics, but there is no unified command, no single voice with authority, just opinions and egos and territorial instincts. Each man commands his own contingent. Each makes his own decisions. The Mongols are running scared, Mstislav the Bold insists. We need to move faster. We need to stay together. Mstislav III counters. Patience. Neither listens to the other. Day 3. The pattern repeats. Mongols visible on the horizon, moving east, turning occasionally to skirmish. But today, there is something new. The Rus vanguard finds abandoned equipment, saddles, cooking pots, even some armor tossed aside as if in panic, and coins, silver coins scattered on the ground. The soldiers pocket them eagerly, more evidence that the enemy is fleeing in disorder. They are abandoning their wealth. They cannot carry it and run at the same time. What the soldiers do not consider is that professional cavalry does not abandon equipment unless ordered to. That warriors who have survived 3 years and 5,000 miles do not panic and throw away silver. They see what they want to see, confirmation of their assumptions. That night morale is still high, but the infantry is struggling. 20 miles a day on foot, carrying weapons and supplies in the heat of late spring. Blisters become infected wounds. Men start falling behind. The gaps between different contingents grow. Mstislav the Bold is now 15 miles ahead of the main body. The Prince of Kursk's forces are strung out over 10 miles. Communication is becoming difficult, but they are winning. Everyone can see that. The Mongols are desperate. Day 4. This is when the doubt begins. Not loud, not spoken, but present. The mounted scouts who ride ahead and return each evening start asking questions. Why are they retreating in such perfect order? Why do they always stay just far enough ahead? One scout, a veteran of border wars, mentions to his captain that this feels familiar, like tactics the Cumans used to use. His captain dismisses the concern. The Cumans were nomads like the Mongols. Of course, the tactics are similar, but we have 4 times their numbers. Even if it is a trap, so what? We can handle whatever they throw at us. The scout does not argue. But he does not stop thinking about it either. That day, the heat becomes oppressive. 35 degrees Celsius, over 95 Fahrenheit. Water supplies are running low. The rivers they pass are small, seasonal streams, not enough for 80,000 men and their horses. Horses start going lame. The constant riding over rough ground takes its toll. Animals that were fresh 9 days ago are now struggling, and still the Mongols retreat, visible, tantalizing, just out of reach. That night, Mstislav III suggests turning back. We have chased them out of Rus territory. We have proven our strength. Let them go. Mstislav the Bold explodes. Turn back after we have come this far? After we have them on the run? Are you a coward? The council nearly comes to blows. They decide to continue. But the unity, such as it was, is fracturing. Day 5. The Mongol rearguard turns and fights. Not a full engagement, just a skirmish. Maybe 200 cavalry wheel around, fire a volley of arrows at the Rus vanguard, then retreat before contact can be made. 3 men die. A dozen are wounded. It is the first real resistance they have encountered since the river crossing. And it changes nothing. The Mongols are still retreating, still visible on the horizon. But that night, around the fires, the talk is different. They are testing us, seeing how we react. Why would they do that if they are truly fleeing? Maybe they are waiting for reinforcements. Maybe this is a trap. The veterans, the men who have fought before, are starting to feel something wrong. An instinct, a sense that this is not what it appears to be. But the princes are committed now. Pride will not let them turn back. They have told their men they are winning. They have sent word back to Kiev that the Mongols are fleeing. To turn back now would be to admit they were wrong. So they continue. Day 6. The cracks in the coalition become visible to everyone. Mstislav the Bold's forces are now 25 miles ahead of the main body. He is demanding that other princes send him their mounted troops. Give me your cavalry. I can catch them if I move fast. Mstislav III refuses. You will get cut off, surrounded. We stay together. Neither has the authority to order the other, so the army stays fractured, spread across 30 miles of steppe, moving like a slug. Slow, vulnerable. The infantry is in terrible shape now. Men are collapsing from heat exhaustion. Dysentery is spreading because water discipline has completely broken down. Soldiers are drinking from any source they can find. And the Mongols continue their perfect retreat, always visible, always just out of reach. That night, a junior officer approaches his prince with a calculation. Based on our rate of advance and their rate of retreat, we will never catch them. They are controlling the pace. The prince does not want to hear it. We caught them at the river, did we not? We will catch them again. The officer does not mention that catching 1,000 sacrificial lambs is different from catching 20,000 professional cavalry. Day 7. Discipline is collapsing. Soldiers are throwing away equipment to move faster. Shields, extra armor, supplies. The very thing they mocked the Mongols for doing 3 days ago. Horses are dying now. Pushed too hard for too long without proper rest, without adequate water. The army that left the Dnieper 7 days ago with 80,000 men is now spread across 40 miles. Maybe 60,000 are still combat effective. The rest are stragglers, walking wounded, men who will not reach the battlefield in time. But the Mongols are slowing down. You can see it. They are not moving as fast today. Maybe they are tired too. Maybe their horses are wearing out. This becomes the new hope. We are grinding them down. They cannot maintain this pace forever. What the soldiers do not know is that each Mongol warrior rotates between fresh mounts. Their animals are rested. The Rus cavalry has one exhausted horse per man. That night, in the Mongol camp 2 days' ride ahead, Jebe finds Subutai reviewing maps by firelight. "They are breaking," Jebe observes quietly. "Another 2 days, and they will be combat ineffective, even before we engage." Subutai nods without looking up. The Kalka River position is ideal. Hills on the west bank for them to occupy. Flat ground on the east for us to maneuver. We arrive tomorrow evening. They will arrive the day after. And if they turn back, they will not. Pride has them now, the same pride that made them execute our ambassadors. Jebe smiles. It is not a pleasant smile. "Then we finish this at the Kalka. Same as we planned 3 years ago. Same as we planned," Subutai confirms. 2 men, 1 plan. Perfect coordination. This is why the Mongols win. Day 8. Mstislav the Bold sends a message to the other princes. I can see them clearly now. They are forming defensive positions near a river. Tomorrow we will have them. Mstislav III is skeptical, but he is also exhausted, worn down by 8 days of arguing and heat and dust. Fine. Tomorrow we will see. That night some of the veterans gather quietly. They do not speak to the officers. They know better. But among themselves, they share a dark understanding. This feels wrong. We are too strung out, too disorganized, too far from home. If this is a trap, we are already in it. But what can they do? Soldiers follow orders, and the orders are to advance. Day 9, May 30th, 12:23. The scouts return in the morning with news that changes everything. The Mongols have stopped. They are no longer retreating. They are forming up for battle on the banks of the Kalka River. After 9 days of pursuit, the enemy is finally going to stand and fight. The news spreads through the camp like wildfire. Finally we have them. The exhaustion of the past week falls away, replaced by excitement, anticipation, relief. Tomorrow this ends. But let me tell you what is actually happening, because this is where you need to understand the difference between what the Rus see and what is real. From the Rus perspective, they have chased a fleeing enemy 200 miles. They have won every engagement. The Mongols are desperate, backed against a river, forced to fight. From Subutai's perspective, he has successfully drawn an 80,000-man army 200 miles from their supply base. He has exhausted them, divided them, strung them out across 40 miles of territory he has mapped a dozen times over the past 3 years. He knows every hill, every stream, every patch of soft ground. He has chosen the battlefield, chosen the timing, chosen the conditions. This is not desperation. This is preparation. 9 days was not retreat. It was positioning. And tonight, while the Rus celebrate and argue and try to organize themselves for tomorrow's battle, Subutai is making his final adjustments. Let me take you inside the Mongol camp, because this matters. Subutai sits with his senior officers around a small fire. Jebe is there. So are the commanders of the Tumans, the units of 1,000 men each. They do not celebrate. There is no drinking, no boasting. They review. The terrain. The Kalka River is shallow here, easy to cross. But the western bank has a series of small hills, natural defensive positions. Subutai predicts that at least one contingent of Rus will occupy those hills rather than crossing. Good. Let them. Isolated forces are easier to handle. The eastern bank is flat, open ground. Perfect for cavalry maneuvers, for encirclements. The enemy disposition. Reports from scouts who have been shadowing the Rus all day. Mstislav the Bold is camped 5 miles to the west with approximately 30,000 men, a mix of his own forces and the Cumans under Khan Khotin. He will attack first. He always does. Aggressive, impatient. Grand Prince Mstislav III is on the hills on the western bank with 10,000 men, defensive, cautious. He will wait to see what happens. The other contingents are scattered. Some will arrive in time for the battle. Some will not. This is acceptable. Subutai has planned for multiple scenarios. The timing. Dawn attack is likely. Mstislav the Bold will not wait. He will want to strike while the Mongols are supposedly still forming up. Good. Let him come. The deployment. Subutai draws in the dirt with a stick. The main force will be divided into 3 parts. Center, left wing, right wing. The center will be light. A screening force. 6,000 light cavalry and archers. Their job is to engage the initial charge and then conduct a controlled withdrawal. Not a rout. A tactical retreat. The wings will be heavy cavalry, 6,000 on each side, hidden behind low rises to the north and south, out of sight until the moment comes when the Rus commit to pursuing the center. The wings close simultaneously. Pincer movement. Jebe will command the northern wing. Subutai will command the southern. Coordination will be by signal flags and horn blasts. They rehearse the signals. 3 short blasts means advance. 2 long means hold position. 1 continuous means close the trap. Simple, clear, practiced. Every man in the Mongol army knows his role, knows where he needs to be, knows what signal to listen for. This is not improvisation. This is a plan that has been refined over 9 days of watching the enemy, over 3 years of testing tactics against different opponents, over lifetimes of professional military service. Now let me take you to the Rus camp, because the contrast is instructive. Mstislav the Bold is in high spirits. He walks among his men joking, boasting about tomorrow's victory. His tent is loud with talk and laughter. He does not consult with the other princes. Why should he? He knows what he's going to do. He will attack at dawn, cross the river, crush the Mongols, be home in a week? Simple. Across the river on the western hills, Grand Prince Mstislav III is in a different mood. He has pitched his camp on high ground. Good defensive position. He can see the eastern bank clearly, see where the Mongols are forming up. He does not trust this. Something about it feels wrong, but he is not in command of the whole army. He cannot order the other princes to wait, to coordinate, to think. All he can do is control his own forces, and so he has decided to stay on the western bank, fortify his position, let the others attack first, see what happens. If it goes well, he can cross and support. If it goes badly, he has a defensive position to fall back to. It is not cowardice. It is caution, the kind of strategic thinking that comes from experience. But it is also the decision that will doom him. Because Subutai and Jebe are not planning to attack the hills. They are planning to let Mstislav III sit there and watch while they destroy everyone else. And then, with the Grand Prince isolated and demoralized, they will extract a surrender and turn that surrender into a horror. Let me pause here and speak directly to you. You have been in situations where things felt wrong, where your instincts told you something was off, where the easy answer seemed too easy. Maybe it was in business. Maybe it was in your personal life. Maybe it was in leadership decisions where the confident voices drowned out the cautious ones. And you had a choice. Trust your instincts or trust the people around you who seemed so certain. The veterans in the Rus camp tonight are facing that choice. They feel it. This is wrong. We are spread too thin, too disorganized, too far from support. But the princes are confident. The plan is set. The momentum is unstoppable. What would you do? Be honest with yourself. In the moment, with peer pressure and exhaustion, and the desire to believe that 9 days of suffering will end in victory, would you speak up? Would you risk being called a pessimist, or would you trust that the people in charge know what they are doing? History is full of moments where someone knew better but stayed silent. Tomorrow morning, that silence will cost 70,000 lives. As the night deepens, different men make different preparations. In the Mongol camp, warriors check their equipment methodically. Bows are inspected. Bowstrings are tested. Arrows are counted, armor is tightened, each man confirms he has fresh horses ready. Fed, rested, they sleep in shifts. Never the whole army at once, always someone on watch, always someone ready. In the Rus camp, some men sleep soundly, confident in tomorrow's victory. Others lie awake, staring at the stars, thinking about home. The Cumans, Khan Khotun's warriors, are restless. They have fought steppe nomads before. They recognize the patterns. This feels like a trap. But they are not in command. They are auxiliaries. They will follow their son-in-law into battle tomorrow because that is what honor demands, even if their instincts scream otherwise. Around midnight, a young Rus soldier writes a letter to his wife by firelight. He will not send it. There is no messenger service on campaign, but writing it comforts him. He tells her about the long chase, about how they finally caught the enemy, about how tomorrow he will fight and win and come home. He does not mention the blisters on his feet, the hunger in his belly, the gnawing doubt in his mind. He folds the letter carefully and tucks it inside his armor, against his heart. Tomorrow, that letter will burn with him the final hours before dawn. Subutai does not sleep. He walks through the camp, checks on his men, a word here, a nod there. He is 35 years old. 2 decades since he joined the army at 14. 2 decades of constant warfare, learning, adapting, perfecting his craft. He thinks about the path that brought him here. The blacksmith's son who became one of the greatest military commanders in history. Not yet, but he will be. This is what he was born to do, not because he loves killing, but because he loves problems, puzzles, the challenge of taking chaos and imposing order on it. On Kichim, tomorrow's battle is the final examination of everything he has learned, everything he has prepared. If it works, it will be perfect, a masterpiece. If it fails, he will be dead and his name forgotten. He does not think it will fail. JB finds him just before dawn. The 2 men stand together in silence, watching the eastern horizon lighten. JB thinks about the arrow he fired 21 years ago, the horse he killed, the moment he thought his life was over, and the moment Genghis Khan smiled and gave him a new name, a new purpose. Everything since then has been a gift. Every battle, every victory, every day alive. Tomorrow, he will earn that gift one more time, or he will die trying. The sun rises on May 31st, 1223. The last day these 80,000 men will know as warriors. For most, it will be the last day they know at all. The Rus army stirs. Men eat cold rations, check weapons, form up in their respective contingents. There is still no unified command, no single battle plan, just a vague understanding that they will cross the river and attack. Mstislav the Bold does not wait for coordination. He never does. He gives the order to his 30,000 men and the 15,000 Cumans under Khan Khotun. He raises his sword high. The morning sun catches the blade, sending light flashing across thousands of waiting warriors. Cross the river, attack, win. The charge begins. And 200 miles away, across 9 days of deception and death, Subutai's trap springs shut with the precision of a master craftsman closing a vise. What happens next will be studied for 800 years. Dawn breaks over the Kalka River. The light is soft, golden, the kind of morning that poets write about. By noon, this riverbank will be a slaughterhouse. By sunset, 70,000 men will be dead or dying. But right now, in this moment, there is still hope, still confidence, still the belief that numbers matter more than preparation. Mstislav the Bold sits on his horse at the edge of the western bank, looking east across the shallow water. Behind him, 30,000 warriors, his own men from Galicia, heavy cavalry in armor, infantry with shields and spears, and beside them 15,000 Cumans under Khan Khotun, light cavalry, fast, experienced in steppe warfare. 45,000 men total. against what appears to be 20,000 Mongols forming up on the eastern bank. The mathematics are simple. More than 2-to-1 odds. Better than that, actually, because more Rus contingents are coming up from behind. Mstislav does not wait for them. The charge begins. 45,000 men do not move as one unit. That is impossible. But they move in waves. The cavalry first. Thousands of horses splashing into the Kalka, which is shallow here. Knee-deep on the horses, easy crossing. The sound is tremendous. Hooves on water, armor clanking, men shouting. War cries in a dozen different dialects. The Mongol lines ahead do not move. They wait. Archers ready. Light cavalry in loose formation. When the Rus cavalry reaches the middle of the river, the Mongol archers fire. Not a volley. Not a mass of arrows that darkens the sky. This is precise. Controlled. Aimed fire at specific targets. Men fall from their horses. Not many. Maybe 50 in the first 30 seconds, but enough to create obstacles, enough to slow the charge slightly. The Rus keep coming. And then, just as the first wave is about to reach the eastern bank, the Mongol line breaks. They turn. They retreat. Not in panic, in formation, maintaining their spacing, but clearly withdrawing. The Rus warriors who have studied military tactics recognize this immediately. Feigned retreat, classic step tactic. But what are they supposed to do? Stop the charge? Pull back? When they outnumber the enemy 2-to-1 and have momentum? No. You commit. You push through. You trust your numbers. Mstislav the Bold's cavalry crashes onto the eastern bank and begins pursuing the retreating Mongols. We are winning. The thought runs through the ranks. They are running, just like they have been running for 9 days. One more push and this is over. What the Rus cannot see from their position are the two forces of Mongol heavy cavalry hidden behind low rises 1 mile to the north and 1 mile to the south. Each force numbers 6,000 men, not light cavalry, not horse archers, heavy cavalry, armored riders on armored horses, the shock troops of the Mongol army, the hammer that closes the trap. Jebe commands the northern force. Subutai commands the southern. They wait in perfect silence. Their men have done this before. They know the pattern. They know their roles. They watch the Rus cavalry pursue the retreating center. Watch them spread out, lose cohesion, focus entirely on the enemy in front of them. And then the signal comes. One long, continuous horn blast. Close the trap. The northern and southern wings of the Mongol army wheel inward simultaneously. This is the moment that defines the battle, the moment when reconnaissance becomes annihilation. Imagine you are a Rus warrior, 500 yards onto the eastern bank, chasing what appears to be a fleeing enemy. Your blood is up. You are focused forward. And then you hear thunder to your left. You turn your head and see 6,000 cavalry charging at you from the north. Heavy cavalry, moving at full gallop. Before you can react, before you can even process what is happening, you hear the same thunder to your right. 6,000 more from the south. You are not in a battle line. You are in a loose pursuit formation. Spread out, disorganized, focused the wrong direction, and you have maybe 30 seconds before the trap closes completely. What do? Most men freeze. The brain cannot process this fast, cannot shift from offense to defense, cannot reorganize a cavalry charge in 30 seconds. Some try to turn and fight. But turning a horse is not instantaneous, and by the time you are facing the threat, it is already on top of you. The smart ones try to flee back to the river, back to the western bank where the rest of the army is waiting, but they are too far, too spread out, and the Mongol wings are closing too fast. The encirclement completes in less than 5 minutes. 45,000 men are now surrounded, their backs to the river. Mongol cavalry on 3 sides, and from all directions, arrows begin to fall. Let me explain what happens when you have roughly 8,000 archers firing into an enclosed space. Each archer can sustain 10 to 15 arrows per minute. That is 80,000 to 120,000 arrows per minute falling on a space roughly half a mile square. The air fills with the whistle of arrows, with the sound of impacts, metal on metal, metal on flesh, metal on wood, metal on bone. Men die without ever seeing who killed them. Horses scream and collapse. The wounded fall and are trampled by their own comrades trying to move, trying to find cover that does not exist. This is not a battle anymore. This is systematic execution. And then something happens that turns catastrophe into apocalypse. The Cumans break. Con Coton is not a coward. He has fought in dozens of battles, survived decades of warfare on the steppes. But he recognizes what is happening here. He has seen this before, the classic pincer movement. The arrows storm from all sides. The complete control of the battlefield. He knows that staying means death, not heroic death in battle, just death, pointless, inevitable. So he makes a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life. He orders his 15,000 Cumans to retreat. Not to the east. That is where the Mongols are. Not to the north or south. Those routes are blocked. To the west. Back across the river. Back the way they came. But here is the problem. Between the Cumans and the western bank are 30,000 Rus warriors, allies, friends, family in some cases. The Cumans do not have time to go around, do not have time to coordinate, do not have time to explain. They simply turn and ride. 15,000 cavalry moving at full speed in the opposite direction from the enemy, directly through their own allied lines. Imagine you are a Rus infantryman who has just crossed the river. You are forming up with your unit, getting ready to support the cavalry that charged ahead, and suddenly you see 15,000 horsemen riding toward you at full gallop. Not Mongols, your own allies. You do not understand what is happening. Are they retreating? Are they regrouping? Is this part of the plan? You stand there confused for maybe 3 seconds, and then they hit you. Horses weighing 1,000 pounds, moving at 30 miles per hour do not stop for infantry in their path. They go through, over, around. Men are crushed, trampled, scattered like leaves in a storm. Units that were forming into coherent fighting formations disintegrate into chaos. Officers lose sight of their men. Commands cannot be heard over the screaming and the thunder of hooves. And in that chaos, gaps open. Weak points, vulnerabilities. The Mongols see these gaps immediately because they are watching, waiting, looking for exactly this kind of opportunity. Mongol heavy cavalry charges through the gaps opened by the fleeing Cumans, not pursuing the Cumans, pursuing the mission, which is to destroy the Rus army. They hit the disorganized infantry like a sledgehammer hitting glass. 5 miles to the west, Prince Mstislav of Chernigov is advancing with his contingent, 10,000 men. He left camp late, took his time organizing, made sure his forces were properly formed before moving out. He reaches the Kalka River just in time to see 15,000 Cumans fleeing west at full speed. He does not know what happened on the eastern bank, cannot see through the dust and chaos. All he knows is that Allied cavalry is retreating in disorder, which means something has gone very wrong. He orders his men to form a defensive line, shields up, spears ready, prepare for Mongol pursuit. But his men have no idea what is happening either. They have not been in the battle, have not seen the trap close, do not understand that they are now facing an enemy that has complete control of the battlefield. They stand there, shields raised, watching thousands of Cumans stream past them. And then they collide with the retreating Rus cavalry from Mstislav the Bold's force. Men who are not fleeing in panic exactly, but who are definitely retreating, who have seen what the arrow storm can do, who have watched the pincer movement close. Mstislav of Chernigov tries to maintain order, tries to keep his line intact, tries to figure out what is happening. And that is when the Mongols add smoke bombs to the confusion. Mongol smoke bombs are simple, clay pots filled with burning pitch and oil-soaked rags, thrown into enemy formations to create thick black smoke that blinds and chokes. Not sophisticated, Not high-tech, just effective. The smoke rolls across Chernigov's position. Men cannot see, cannot breathe, cannot maintain formation. Officers shout orders that cannot be heard. Soldiers swing weapons at shapes in the smoke that might be enemies or might be their own comrades, and through the smoke come Mongol cavalry, not charging wildly, moving with precision, targeting officers, targeting anyone trying to organize resistance. Prince Mstislav of Chernigov dies in the first hour of combat, not in a heroic duel, not leading a glorious charge. He simply takes an arrow in the throat while trying to rally his men, falls from his horse, is trampled in the chaos. His 10,000 men, leaderless, blind, confused, collapse as a fighting force in less than 20 minutes. Some surrender, some flee, some fight to the death without ever seeing the enemy clearly. It does not matter which choice they make, the result is the same. Back on the eastern bank, the situation is even worse. Mstislav the Bold's forces are completely surrounded. The Mongol wings have closed fully. There is no gap, no escape route, just a killing zone maybe 800 yards in diameter, packed with tens of thousands of men and horses and the dying and the dead. The Mongol cavalry does not charge into this mass. That would be suicide. Instead, they maintain distance and fire arrows, constantly, methodically. When any group of Rus warriors tries to organize a breakout, a formation of Mongol heavy cavalry moves to block it. Not to engage in melee combat, just to block, to contain. And the arrows keep falling. Men try to use their shields for cover, but you cannot maintain a shield wall when you are packed shoulder to shoulder with nowhere to go. Cannot coordinate movements when communication is impossible. The wounded cannot be moved, cannot be treated. They lie where they fall, bleeding, being trampled by their own comrades. The horses, terrified by the noise and the blood and the arrows, panic, rear, throw their riders, add to the chaos. It is hell, pure hell, made worse by the fact that the Mongols are not even fighting hand-to-hand. They are executing from a distance, professional, efficient, remorseless. And then Mstislav the Bold does something that saves his life and condemns his honor. He sees that this is lost, that there is no victory here, that staying means death. So he gathers his personal guard, maybe 200 men, the best warriors he has, the ones who are still mounted, still combat effective. And he charges, not at the Mongols, at the weakest point in the encirclement, a gap between two Mongol formations where the line is thinnest. It is a desperate move, heroic in its way, or cowardly, depending on your perspective. His guard crashes into the Mongol line with everything they have. Swords swinging, horses screaming, fighting with the fury of men who know they have one chance, and they break through. The Mongols let them go, not because they have to, but because 200 men fleeing west is acceptable. They are not the target is the army, and the army is not going anywhere. Mstislav the Bold rides west, rides hard, does not look back. Behind him, the slaughter continues. 25,000 men die on the eastern bank of the Kalka River in the space of 4 hours. Not all at once, not in one glorious clash. They die in waves, in groups, slowly, horribly. When there are no more warriors standing, when there is nothing left to kill, the Mongols stop firing arrows. They move through the field, methodically finishing the wounded. Not out of cruelty, out of professionalism. You do not leave enemy soldiers behind you, even wounded ones. The silence that follows is almost worse than the noise of battle, just the sound of wind across the steppe, and the moans of men who are dying too slowly. 5 miles to the west, on the hills overlooking the western bank of the Kalka, Grand Prince Mstislav III watches the destruction of his coalition. He has 10,000 men, the largest intact force remaining, safe on their defensive hill behind hastily constructed earthworks. He watched the Cumans flee through the Allied lines, watched the smoke rise over Chernigov's position, watched the eastern bank turn into a killing field, and he did nothing, not because he is a coward, but because there is nothing he can do. Charging down from his hill to join the battle would just add 10,000 more corpses to the count. So he waits, watches, and prays that the Mongols will be satisfied with what they have won. They are not. As the sun begins to set on May 31st, Mongol cavalry surrounds the hill, not attacking, just surrounding, cutting off any escape route. And there they wait, 3 days. That is how long the siege of Mstislav III's hill lasts. 3 days without food, 3 days without water, 3 days listening to the screams of the wounded down below as the Mongols execute them systematically. 3 days knowing that rescue is not coming, that the army is destroyed, that hope is gone. On the first day, Mstislav organizes a defense, earthworks, shield walls, archer positions, everything by the book. The Mongols do not attack, they just wait. On the second day, water runs out. Men start dying of dehydration in the heat. The wounded cannot be treated. Morale collapses. Some soldiers want to charge down the hill, die fighting rather than die of thirst. Mstislav refuses. As long as we hold this position, we have value. They might negotiate. On the third day, June 2nd, Mongol commanders approach under a truce flag. They offer terms, surrender, lay down your weapons. We promise that no noble blood will be shed. You and your boyars will be granted safe passage home. It is a lie. Mstislav knows it is a lie. Everyone knows it is a lie. But what choice does he have? His men are dying of dehydration, cannot fight, cannot flee, cannot hold out another day. He accepts the terms and seals his fate. The Rus nobles surrender. 10,000 men lay down their weapons. Mstislav and his 12 senior boyars are separated from the common soldiers. The common soldiers are executed immediately, quickly, efficiently. But the nobles receive special treatment. The Mongols bind their hands and feet, lay them on the ground in a neat row, Mstislav in the center, his boyars on either side. And then Mongol engineers construct a heavy wooden platform over them. Not quickly. They take their time, make sure it is solid, make sure the weight is distributed evenly. And when the platform is complete, Subutai and Jebe and the other Mongol officers climb on top of it. They hold their victory feast there, on the platform, eating, drinking, celebrating. Below them, Mstislav III and his boyars are slowly crushed to death by the weight. It takes hours, not because the Mongols are sadistic, but because they are making a point. You killed our ambassadors. You violated the most sacred rule of civilized warfare. You declared that you recognized no law. So we will kill you in a way that technically keeps our promise. No noble blood will be shed, not a drop, because you will die of suffocation, of internal injuries, of slow crushing pressure. But there will be no blood. The promise is kept in the most horrifying way possible. As Mstislav III feels the weight pressing down, crushing his ribs, forcing the air from his lungs, he thinks about that council meeting 3 months ago, the ambassadors standing before them, young men, unarmed, carrying a message of peace, and Mstislav the Bold demanding their execution, the other princes agreeing, the votes being counted. He had hesitated, had known it was wrong, but he had given the order anyway, to appear strong, to satisfy other people's expectations. Sometimes the worst decisions are the ones we make to please others. His last thought, as consciousness fades, is a simple one. I should have listened to myself. Let me pause here, because I need you to understand what this is. This is not random cruelty. This is not the act of barbarians who do not know better. This is calculated psychological warfare. A message sent to every prince, every king, every ruler in Rus and beyond. The message is simple. Rules matter. Laws matter. Diplomacy matters. And if you break those rules, there will be consequences so terrible that your death will become a story told for generations. It worked. The story of what happened at the Kalka River spread like wildfire. For a generation, the Mongols became figures of nightmare in Russian folklore. Parents frightened children with tales of the Eastern riders who crushed princes beneath victory platforms. When the Mongols returned 14 years later, resistance was half-hearted. Because everyone remembered the Kalka River. The butcher's bill is staggering. 80,000 men marched east from the Dnieper River in late April of 1223. Fewer than 10,000 returned home. Estimates of casualties vary by chronicle. Some say 50,000 dead. Some say 70,000. Some sources suggest as high as 90% of the force was destroyed. 9 princes died. 3 executed beneath the platform. 6 killed in the pursuit and slaughter. The flower of Rus nobility, gone in a single day. Mongol casualties? Minimal, maybe a few hundred, mostly from the initial skirmishes and the sacrifice of the rear guard. It is one of the most lopsided military victories in human history. And it was not luck. It was not superior numbers. It was not better equipment. It was preparation, intelligence, discipline, unified command, everything the Rus lacked. Mstislav the Bold reaches the Dnieper River 3 days after the battle. He finds the boats they used to cross on the march east, and in an act of panic that speaks volumes about his state of mind, he destroys every single one. Burns them, sinks them, makes absolutely certain that the Mongols cannot follow. But the Mongols do not follow. They raid a few southern towns, test a few more fortifications, gather the last pieces of intelligence they need, and then they turn east, away from Rus, back toward Mongolia. The campaign is over. The return journey is almost as remarkable as the advance. Subutai and Jebe lead their 20,000 cavalry east across the steppes, cross the Volga River into territory controlled by the Volga Bulgars. And there, for the first time in 3 years, they lose a battle. The Bulgars ambush them in forested terrain, territory that does not favor cavalry. The Mongols take casualties and are forced to retreat. It is the only defeat they suffer in the entire 3-year campaign. In the next engagement, they adapt, change tactics, win decisively, and then they continue east, back to Mongolia, back to report to Genghis Khan. They arrive in 1224, 3 years and 5,500 miles after they left. Jebe likely dies during or shortly after this campaign. The exact circumstances remain mysterious. He simply disappears from the historical record. No tomb, no detailed account. One of the greatest cavalry commanders in history vanishes like morning mist, but Subutai survives, and his story is just beginning, because here is what you need to understand. The Kalka River was not a conquest. It was reconnaissance. Subutai and Jebe returned to Genghis Khan's court with detailed reports, maps, intelligence assessments, political analysis. They described the political disunity of the Rus principalities, the quality of their armies, the nature of the landscape, the optimal invasion routes, the seasonal patterns of the rivers. They explained that the Rus are not ready to unify against an external threat, that their princes are too proud, too competitive, too focused on their own power struggles. They recommend that the Mongols return, not now, but when the time is right, when resources can be committed to full conquest rather than just reconnaissance. Genghis Khan listens, nods, files the information away. He dies 3 years later, in 1227. The conquest of Rus will fall to his successors, but the plan is already in place. The intelligence is already gathered. All that remains is execution. 14 years later, 1237, the Mongols return to Rus, not with 20,000 cavalry, with over 100,000 warriors. Multiple armies, siege equipment, supply trains. This time, they are not scouting. They are conquering. Subutai leads the invasion alongside Batu Khan, Genghis's grandson. Subutai is 49 years old now, a grizzled veteran with more military experience than anyone alive. And he uses everything he learned at the Kalka River. The Rus try to form coalitions, try to coordinate defenses, but they still cannot agree on unified command, still cannot put aside their rivalries. Kiev falls. Chernigov falls. Galicia falls. Volhynia falls. City after city, principality after principality. Within 3 years, all of Rus is under Mongol control, becomes a vassal state of what history will call the Golden Horde. For the next 240 years, Russia lives under what historians call the Mongol yoke. Russian history, culture, political development, military tradition, everything is fundamentally altered by this period of domination, and it might have been prevented if someone had paid attention to the warning delivered at the Kalka River, if someone had learned the lessons, had unified command, had taken the threat seriously. But they did not. 1241. 4 years after the conquest of Rus, the Mongols turn west. Subutai is 53 now, still commanding armies, still winning battles. On the same weekend in April of 1241, Mongol armies simultaneously defeat Polish forces at Legnica and Hungarian forces at Mohyl. 2 battles, over 1,000 miles apart, both using variations of the tactics perfected at the Kalka River. Feigned retreats, pincer movements, coordinated attacks, systematic destruction. The Mongols reach the Adriatic Sea, come within 100 miles of Vienna. All of Western Europe is in panic. Nothing can stop them. Every army they face is defeated. Every tactic the Europeans try is countered. And then, in December of 1241, Great Khan Ögedei dies in Mongolia. Mongol law requires all princes to return to the capital for the succession crisis, to elect the new Khan. Batu Khan withdraws. Subutai withdraws. The entire invasion force turns around and marches back to Mongolia. Western Europe is saved, not by military victory, but by political accident. Think about that. The Mongol Empire came that close to controlling everything from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic, from China to France. One death changed the course of Western history. So what made the Kalka River trap so devastatingly effective? Let me break this down into lessons that apply far beyond medieval warfare. Because this matters. This is not just history. This is wisdom. First lesson: victory begins long before the battle. The feigned retreat that drew the Rus army 200 miles from home was not improvisation. It was a carefully executed plan that required extraordinary discipline. 9 days, 20,000 horsemen maintaining a coordinated retreat. Never breaking character, always staying just far enough ahead to keep the enemy chasing. That level of unit cohesion is almost impossible to achieve. It requires training, trust, communication, shared understanding of the mission. How many organizations have you seen that could maintain that kind of coordination for 9 hours, let alone 9 days? Second lesson: weaponize your enemy's psychology. The Mongols knew the Rus princes were proud warriors who had just formed a coalition against a common threat. They knew these men would see an initial easy victory as validation of their strength. Every decision Subutai and Jebe made was designed to reinforce Rus' overconfidence while simultaneously exhausting and dividing them. This is psychological warfare at a level that is honestly chilling when you analyze it. In your career, how many times have you seen someone defeated not by superior force, but by their own assumptions, their own pride, their own refusal to question the narrative they wanted to believe? Third lesson: mobility equals power. The Mongols could sustain marches of 60 to 100 miles per day because they rotated between fresh mounts. They kept their forces fresh while the Rus army, tied to slower infantry, exhausted itself trying to keep pace. In the final battle, when the Mongols needed to transition from light cavalry to heavy cavalry, they made the switch in minutes. because they had planned for it. The Rus never had a chance to adapt. Speed, flexibility, the ability to change faster than your opponent can react. That is power in any era. Fourth lesson: unified command is not optional. The Mongols operated as a single organism under Subutai and Jebi's direction. Every unit knew its role. Every maneuver was coordinated. The Rus operated as 10 separate armies that occasionally cooperated. When the crisis came, that lack of unified command killed them. There is a reason modern military doctrine emphasizes clear chains of command. The Kalka River is Exhibit A for why. In your professional life, how many projects failed because no one was really in charge? Because every stakeholder had veto power? Because decisions were made by committee? Fifth lesson: intelligence wins wars. The Mongols had been gathering information about the Rus for 3 years. They understood the terrain, the politics, the military capabilities. They knew exactly how far they could push before the Rus would break. The Rus, by contrast, knew almost nothing about their enemy. They were fighting blind against an opponent who could see everything. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power, and the Mongols applied their knowledge with surgical precision. And finally, patience is a weapon. Subutai and Jebe spent 9 days setting up a battle that lasted less than a day. They did not rush. They did not improvise. They executed a plan with the precision of a surgical strike. In our modern world of instant gratification, there is something almost alien about that level of patience in pursuit of a goal. But that patience is what separated the Mongols from everyone else. That patience is what allowed them to conquer half the known world. 80,000 men marched east into the steppe, chasing what they thought was a beaten enemy. Fewer than 8,000 came home. It was not a battle. It was a masterclass in deception, coordination, and ruthless efficiency. It was the perfect trap. And here is what keeps me up at night when I study this. How many times in your life have you been absolutely certain you were the hunter, only to discover too late that you were always the prey? How many times have you pursued what looked like victory, only to find yourself exhausted, divided, and surrounded by an enemy who planned every step? The Kalka River teaches us that confidence without intelligence is suicide, that strength without coordination is weakness, that the most dangerous opponent is the one with the patience to let you defeat yourself. A Russian chronicler, writing about the Kalka River, captured the sheer incomprehensibility of what had happened. We know not where they came from, nor where they went. God sent them for our sins. That is the voice of a civilization that had just encountered something beyond its understanding. But we, with the benefit of hindsight, can see the truth. They came from careful planning, from 3 years of reconnaissance, from a culture that valued competence over birth, from a military tradition that treated warfare as a science, not just courage. They went to report success, to deliver intelligence, to prepare for the real invasion that would come 14 years later. And God had nothing to do with it. It was professionalism, pure and simple. The Mongols won because they were better prepared, better coordinated, better led, and willing to be patient enough to do it right. Everything else was just execution. If you want to understand how the Mongols returned in 1237 and conquered all of Rus, that is another story. An even more devastating one: the siege of Kiev, the winter campaigns, the complete subjugation of a civilization. But it all started here, at the Kalka River, with 20,000 cavalry and a 3-year plan. And if you served in an environment where unified command saved lives, where intelligence won battles, where patience made the difference between success and failure, I want to hear your story. Because these lessons are not ancient history. They are as relevant today as they were 800 years ago. The names change, the technology changes, but human nature does not. And the gap between those who prepare and those who assume will always be measured in catastrophe.